Karma Yoga, you mentioned related to the Karma Kanda as well as Karma Yoga in devotional service. And fourth chapter, Transcendental Knowledge. Fifth chapter is Perfecting the Karma Yoga. Sixth chapter is knowledge about Dhyana Yoga. And 7 to 12 chapters about the devotional service. From 13 to 18, you have mentioned about Gnana Yoga. Then you referred about the discussion that you had with Sankirtana Yagna Prabhu about the Bhagavad Gita as it is, like why Prabhupada named it as it is. So during the discussion, you have discussed a few items, and also you explained to us to not to have any confusion, like why Prabhupada named it as it is, and what is his intention, like how he has listed out, not the listed out, narrated in every purport about Krishna. What's the intention behind it? Like the principle is to give the bhakti devotion to the reader. That is why he has he made it as it is, like he never hide anything. He has given translation word by word for each sloka. Sometimes there is a slight variation between translation and purport. In the purport, he will talk about Krishna, but in translation, nothing was mentioned about Krishna. But you have mentioned that it is the reason why Prabhupada has done that way is to give the essence or the real purpose of Bhagavad Gita. The real purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to know that we shouldn't engage in the sense gratification. We should serve Krishna, and devotion is the essence of essence of following the Bhagavad Gita. So you also mentioned about the circumstances when Bhagavad Gita was taught by Krishna to Arjuna. Arjuna is a highly cultured and highly intellectual person, but in the current circumstances, like we are not either highly cultured nor highly intellectual, but Prabhupada wants to convey this information. Also, you mentioned that there are 600 versions of Bhagavad Gita floating around. Prabhupada was asked why there is one more version is needed. So because in all those versions, they talked about Bhagavad Gita, but they did not talk about the essence of Bhagavad Gita. You gave the examples of Mayavadis also. Mayavadis asked Prabhupada, Swamiji, why you put Krishna in the slokas where Krishna was not there? Prabhupada mentioned that why you took away the Krishna where Krishna was included in the sloka 6 times. You gave the example of 9th chapter, last verse, Manmana Bhav Madbhakto. There Mayavadis translated that you bow down to the soul within the soul of the heart of the Krishna, but not Krishna. So to get rid of all those confusions and also to give the right knowledge, Prabhupada has wrote the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And also you gave the example about linguistic person writing something versus the actual person who has that knowledge writing something. You gave the example of a doctor writing a manual versus a linguistic person writing a manual about a procedure that doctor has done. Similarly, Prabhupada is a realized soul, and because he is a realized soul and he understood the Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is very complex subject. That's why he can give the essence of Bhagavad Gita nicely than a linguistic person translate Bhagavad Gita into English. Also, you mentioned about three types of people. Like one type of people is looking for spirituality. Another type of persons are interested, but they don't know what is spirituality, how to get it. Third kind of people are those, they don't want to know about spirituality. Prabhupada, Bhagavad Gita is meant for the second kind of people, those who are in the middle of the spectrum, to convert them into spiritual people. Also, you talked about the compassion a lot, and how Prabhupada is compassionate about. Sorry about it. After that, you started giving the giving the background of Sloka 24. In the last class, Sloka, it was ended at 24, and you gave the example of Janaka Maharaj. Now, in yesterday's class, not yesterday, last Wednesday class, you talked about the slokas 25th, 26th, 27th, and 28th. In 26th, you gave the, in 25th, you mentioned about a ignorant person performing the duties versus a learned person performing the duties. Like Arjuna asked about, tell me what is the right thing. But you gave the example of 3 Ds, detachment, and also dutiful and devotion. Arjuna question was at the bodily platform. That's why he doesn't want to engage himself in the war. But Krishna was telling him that he should be engaged in the war, but he should be detached, and he should be dutiful and also devotional. You gave those examples, and you mentioned that a spiritual person and a materialistic person both will perform the same duties, but the person who is in devotion, their consciousness is different. They do with interest, but they are not attached to that. Both will do both will do their duties affectionately, but the material person is attached to the results. However, the spiritual person is detached. So then you talked about 26. In the 26th, you mentioned about the compassion, Prabhupada compassion a lot. Also, you gave the examples about George Harrison and Peter Bavosh, how their lives have been changed with Prabhupada's association. About George Harrison, you mentioned about he wanted, how famous he is, and he wanted to become a devotee. Prabhupada doesn't want him to become a devotee because he want to serve the people through serve the people because he knows them, and they the reason
Prabhupada was suggesting that he uses musical talents to attract people, so he should use that. If he becomes he was already a devotee. Prabhupada didn't want him to take a proper initiation and change his lifestyle and his dress or move into the temple. So he was already a devotee.
Yeah, that is true, Prabhu. Yeah. And also one Mataji asked the question about why Prabhupada didn't allow him to become a devotee at the personal level. That is his wish. And you have explained very nicely, and also Sankirtana Yagna Prabhu also explained very nicely about inward and outward. Inwardly, he is a devotee. He can perform the devotional service. Outwardly, he need not shave his head and wear devotee dress, and project to the world as a devotee. By not doing it, he will do a better service. That was discussed thoroughly. And 27th also, you have given several examples, and the essence of 27 is not to take the not to take the credit by not doing things. Material nature is the doer, but as an individual person, we will be carried away by the material nature. But for the activities that we are doing, we shouldn't take the credit. You gave the example of the 5 things involved in doing any activity. You gave the reference to the 18th chapter, 14th verse. That's why an individual person is not a doer alone. And also for 28, you gave several examples, and also you have referred to the 3 aspects, that Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The realization can be done in 3 levels, that Brahman realization, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And you gave the example of train coming to the platform. Somebody is seeing from a far away and talking about that something is coming. Then when it stopped, somebody is looking into it. When they go inside and looking into it, like at each level, the realization is different. That's what you discussed about it. And 29th onwards, you wanted to discuss in today's class.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Madhu. So we'll start with 29th verse, and you all can see my screen, the Bhagavad Gita. Can you all see my screen?
Yes,
Prabhuji.
Okay. So 29th verse. So now let's go with 29th verse. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached, but the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. So this verse 29 is similar to 26. Let me go to 26 quickly so that we know what this is. So here Krishna is saying, so as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men, attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Something similar Krishna is mentioning here also in 29, that bewildered because and so he's kind of elaborating on what he said in 26. So they're bewildered by material of nature, right? They fully engage themselves in material activities, thinking that that's the whole in the whole, that's everything, and they become attached to it. But then the wise person here means somebody who's spiritually advanced, a Krishna conscious person. That person does not unsettle the ignorant, right? He sees that they're doing something that is abominable, but they don't directly just go ahead and start bashing them up for it. They are expert in engaging them. Right? So there are 2 phrases being used here. A Kritsna Vido, person with a poor fund of knowledge, and Kritsnavid, Krishnavid, one who is in factual knowledge. So devotees are Krishnavid, and the ignorant person is Akritsnavid. Okay. So Krishnavid is one who is expert in engaging himself and others in meaningful activities. Right? And one who is unaware how to keep oneself engaged is Akritsnavid. So a leader, so person who is spiritually advanced can become a leader, right? If he or she has the vision and he or she has the understanding how I can engage the masses. There is this word in Hindi, right? You must have heard. It's called neta. Neta means a leader. And that comes from the word netra. Netra means vision. So the neta, the leader, has to be kritsnavit. So generally what happens, people who are akritsnavit, who are not aware how to engage oneself, they're not aware how the material modes of nature are captivating. They are not aware of that. Okay? Right? Wake up whenever we want, sleep whenever we want, drink, movies, just whimsically living their lives. It doesn't know how to meaningfully engage oneself. Srila Prabhupada was once walking in Miami, and he was on his morning walk, and he saw a golf course. So Prabhupada had never seen a golf course before. He's coming from India. The golf is not a big sport. At least it was not in the 70s. And he just looked at those old people and he asked them, what are these people doing? And one of his disciples explained to Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, this is a game and they have to hit the ball in a hole and so on and so forth. And Prabhupada's eyes grew moist. He was about to cry because he just couldn't see that how foolish these people are. They have engaged their entire life, spending, working hard to earn money. And now they are old, they have retired, and they have time. Instead of using it properly, now what they're doing is they're using the time to hit a ball in a hole. Right? So especially in this country, the old people don't have much knowledge as to what to do after retirement, because they're so deluded by three modes. Right? People who are in tamoguna, when they they overeat, oversleep, then there is rajoguna, there is passion, and then sattva-guna, some people engage in philosophy, nature walks, nature loving. There's nothing harm in that, but when you just look at all that without Krishna's connection, then it becomes a kind of an entanglement in the mode. So by itself, the activity is not a problem, but if you forget Krishna, then it's a problem. Right? So when we become devotees, even though we are not very advanced, at least I'm not very advanced, but we see that we at least get this understanding that these people are suffering. Right? We feel a bit sad upon seeing this, right? And sometimes what happens that when we see that others are suffering or others are ignorant, we sometimes become hyper enthusiastic. We start criticizing those other people. So Krishna is telling us here, don't do that. Okay? If you start, as they say, right, don't build your houses on bridges. Right? That will never be appreciated. You will be considered a fundamentalist, a fanatic. That's an offense actually. In the one of the offenses that we read, right? The 10 offenses to put. So one of that offense is to instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy. So what does it mean? Is that what does faithless mean? Is that we have to speak glories in a way that they increase faith. They don't decrease that person's faith. They shouldn't increase this skepticism or doubt in that person. Right? So that was what it means. So we should not, when we see somebody who's ignorant, we should not just start giving philosophy in a fundamentalistic way. We shouldn't pretend that, oh, see, I'm so smart and you're an idiot. Nobody will appreciate that. So we should always package the knowledge in a way that it could be delivered properly. Right? Yes, obviously everybody gets Agyat Sukriti, but then if person really likes you and then you're giving knowledge, the person is more, the medicine becomes more palatable and the person is able to take it much better. That's why Krishna is telling, don't become hyper enthusiastic. Don't start criticizing people just because they're not doing according to us. And so when we do that, when we become hyper enthusiastic and start criticizing others, we become social outcasts. Right? And then people start saying that, see, this is what happens when you take up spirituality. And then people get discouraged to take up spirituality. They don't want to take up spirituality because they see that the people are becoming so kind of so fanatical about what they are studying and learning. So people are not encouraged to take up spirituality. That's why Krishna is saying, don't do that, because Krishna, at least the Bhagavad Gita, presents a very friendly spirituality. Anybody at any level can take it up and move forward in their journey. But if we, out of the knowledge that we have received, if we become, critical of others, skeptical, then we can push those people away from their path, which is actually a disservice. As they say, what happens is you are able to give the knowledge to somebody, but then that person will not be the same, right? How do they say that? A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. You can lead a man to wisdom, but you can't make him think. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So that will be the case. You'll be able to give the philosophy to that person, but the person will inside will become a hardcore antagonist to what you are giving. Upwardly, you might convince that person, but inside he's completely gone. He's never going to come back to spirituality. So Krishna is giving here. So what to do? Krishna is giving us a clue here, right? So he's saying the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to performance lack of knowledge. And so what Krishna is telling us that devotees should not disturb them by the so-called fundamental spirituality. So Krishna is saying engage them in activities so that they can slowly come to Bhakti, right? So in the early days of the right, Prabhupada was invited to a community of people. The disciples said, Prabhupada, why don't you give a talk there? They have some potential. They can also take up Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada happily agreed. Prabhupada went to give a talk, and there he noticed that people were burning banana peels. So in the 1970s, there was this understanding that banana peels can help you get high. Okay? And when Prabhupada reached there, he saw that many people were even dressed in bananas. So Prabhupada spoke for a few minutes, but then Prabhupada realized nothing is going to go through in these hands because they are already high. So Prabhupada started chanting. And the chanting, the kirtan went on for a couple of hours. And everybody was very ecstatic, right? So when Prabhupada was leaving, the community people wanted to give him a gift. And what was the gift? Would expect is bananas. But then what the people said that once you eat the bananas, you'll have to give us the peels back. So disciples were not sure about it. Prabhupada said, what is that? What's that? That's not proper. It's in a mood of ignorance and so on and so forth. But Prabhupada said, no, it's okay. Right? We will offer the bananas to the Lord and they can take the peels back. At least they will get some sukriti. Right? This is called Krishna Vinna Vichalaya. That's what it means. That a person who is smart, who's advanced, he will not disturb them, but he will engage them. He will dovetail them. In another episode, so this is I gave you one example where Prabhupada was Krishna Vinna Vichalaya. But then you will see that there are many examples where Prabhupada was Vichalaya. He was kind of giving somebody a jolt because it was necessary to bring them out of their stupidity. Okay. Once what happened, Prabhupada was was invited to a talk show, and the host was very famous famous about insulting his guests. So that's how he kind of gained his ratings. That I will humiliate my people who come, and then the people who are watching the show, they will enjoy it, and so on and so forth. This is a culture of design. That was very stupid. But then Prabhupada said, no, I will go. Wherever I get a chance to spread Krishna consciousness, I will go. So the host, he started by saying that, he started with a very derogatory statement. He said that you're coming from India where the death rate is so high. What are you going to teach us? So what he was indirectly saying is that you come from a country where you don't even have basic healthcare, and you have come here to teach us something. And Prabhupada very appropriately answered that death rate is not high in India. Death rate is the same across the world. It's 100%. Everybody dies. And that kind of shook up the host because he was not expecting that answer. Then again, the host said that, what will happen if everybody takes to Krishna consciousness? How will the world go on? And Prabhupada very bluntly told him that, no, there will always be fools like you and who won't become Krishna conscious. And the world will always go on. So Prabhupada, being an acharya, can do that. But we cannot be, because we are practicing. We are sadhika bhaktas. So what I wanted to give you was a picture of both. Na Vichale and Vichale. Prabhupada had given for both. But then when Prabhupada kind of was very blunt with the host, Prabhupada also told his disciples afterwards that you cannot do it, I can. An old person can do it and just get away with it, but you should not do it, because we as beginners and as sadhaka bhaktas, we are not supposed to do that. Prabhupada can do it. So sometimes you will see that some acharyas, I recently saw a video by His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami way back in 1980s, and again the host was very derogatory, and Maharaj was giving such blunt and right on his face answers. So that's the quality of an acharya. Acharya can do it, right? A self-realized soul can do it, but we as practicing devotees should never do that. So that's one thing. So sometimes it might seem confusing that, oh, I've seen this Maharaj do it, why can't I do it? Because that Maharaj might be at a level where he or she can do it, but we cannot. So I just wanted to bring this to Na Vichale, this is for common people, for all practicing devotees. Na Vichale, never distract anybody, never disturb anybody. Okay, so Prabhupada causes his body is a gift. One who is too much attached to bodily consciousness is called manda, or lazy person without understanding of spirit soul. Let's see what else Prabhupada. Such bewildered persons may be engaged in such primary moral principles of life as non-violence and similar materially benevolent work. So how do we begin off? Prabhupada is giving us some examples here. But how do you bring them on the path? You can tell them about non-violence. And non-violence could even be what they are eating. You can try to promote them to vegetarianism. So that can be a good point to start with. But if a person you just met today and we start preaching about, Rasa Leela and Bhakti and the esoteric principles of Bhakti, the person is never going to come to spirituality. It will be more bewildered than resolved about it. So that's what Prabhupada is explaining, that you could have them in some very basic things, materially benevolent work. Just many people come to the temple and help in some very commonplace things. Or let me fold the chairs for you. Let me put up the tables. Let me wipe somewhere. So some kind of benevolent works, but not intense philosophy. That's it. 29. Okay. Let's move on to 30. Now, this 30, Prabhupada says, this is a very important verse. Prabhupada says, this verse clearly indicates the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. So if anybody asks us, what is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita? You can give a very straightforward verse. Mai sarvani karmani sannyas adhyatma chetasa nirasir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigacchura. Therefore, O Arjun, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claim to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. That's Krishna's comment. So, actually, this is a bhakti verse. It's not a karma yoga verse. Right? So, what Krishna is saying, resign your work to me. Don't give up your work. Okay? Perform your duties, but in a spiritual consciousness. Become conscious of God in everyone and everything and every situation, and deal accordingly. That's what Krishna is explaining here. Right? Just as a newlywed girl, when she goes to her in-laws' house, so she only basically just knows her husband, right? Most other relatives are still fairly new to her. But then she treats all her relatives, all her in-laws, with the relationship she has with her husband in mind. Okay. So similarly, we should also live like that newlywed girl when she comes to her in-laws' house. Everything is related to Krishna. So Krishna is mine, so everybody is Krishna's, and so I see everybody in that relation. Okay. This whole world then becomes a paraphernalia in Krishna's service. In the second canto, first chapter, Prabhupada says this, that it's a sec 2, but he says that the whole world can be, sorry, not second, I'm mixed. But he says that everything can be used as a paraphernalia in Krishna's service. That is Adhyatma Chetasa, that's spiritual consciousness. So that's Adhyatma Chetasa. Adhyatma Chetasa. Adhyatma is full knowledge of self, and Chetasa by consciousness. So that's the spiritual consciousness. So Nirasir, the word Nirasir here So nirasir means without desire for profit. Okay? So for example, in Vedic culture, you see, right, education is free. So, but then somebody can ask you, oh, how will you live if you don't ask for money? So that is a bigger problem, right? I am doubtful how I will be maintained. But in Vedic culture, people were not in doubt about how they will be maintained. They had faith in Krishna. So Eko Bhaushyam, that one Krishna is taking care of all, right? Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam, that one soul is taking care of all the other living entities, all the other souls. So that's what it means. So without desire for profit. Okay. Then comes nirmama, without ownership, without sense of ownership. Right. So when Prabhupada started ISKCON, he had 40 rupees. By the time he left, ISKCON must be worth billions. Right. So when Prabhupada was about to leave his body, some of his relatives, blood relatives, they wanted to stake a claim on ISKCON. They wanted to ask a share in ISKCON. And Prabhupada flatly refused. Said, no, you will not get any share because I never claimed any ownership in ISKCON and in Krishna consciousness, and so I will not let you also do it. So that's the stage. So Prabhupada was exemplifying this verse, no ownership. Okay. And then Yudhyasva Vigata Jwara. So Yudhyasva means fight. So to Arjun, his duty was fighting. And for us, our duty might be something else, but we can understand that Krishna is asking us to do our duty. Right? So just do your duty. Vigata Jwara means giving up your laziness. So Vigat, the word here says Vigata means to give up, and Jwara means lethargy. So laziness. So give up your laziness. Right? So there are three basic problems by which we keep postponing our spiritual activity. Laziness, there is an enjoying mentality, and there is pride. Three major problems that we all have. So Krishna is very clearly saying, do it without laziness. Right? Devotees should always guard against these three problems: laziness, enjoying propensity, and pride. Okay? So when we do good sadhana, that takes care of laziness. When we develop a service attitude, that takes care of the enjoying mentality. And when we have somebody who's accountable or whom we are accountable to, then that takes care of pride. So we should always have somebody who can chastise the good. So these three things are the roadblocks for spiritual progress, and we should fight against them. We should give up those very clearly. So Prabhupada, then in the purport, he says, second line, the Lord instructs that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties as if in military discipline. And this is a very important phrase Prabhupada is putting, military discipline. So Prabhupada is what military discipline means. Like in military, what happens is that whenever people go to train in the military, there are two things that are very important there: attention and submissiveness. Okay. So when we are attentive in our sadhana and we are submissive in our approach to our service, to our gurus, to our teachers, then what happens is that we will be strong, we'll be fortified when Maya attacks us. And Maya will keep on attacking us. So we all should be ready. Attention and submissiveness. Right? So by this regimen of attention and submissiveness, as the saying goes, when we sweat in peace, then we bleed less in war. When we sweat more in peace, we bleed less in war. If you have practiced enough, when everything is going fine, when things are not going fine, then you will not be hurt so much. Your bhakti will not be hurt so much. So always be ready. Sharpen our intelligence with knowledge and keep our consciousness pure, clutter-free, and with focus on Krishna and his instructions. So that's the way to understand this verse.
Excuse me, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so but that the Lord instructs that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties. That just seems like, like one of the instructions that, in the Gita, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. So in a sentence or two, what are you saying is the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita?
Sorry, I didn't get your question, Prabhu. Sorry. So are you saying that Krishna is saying, surrendering all your works unto me, that's not the purpose of Bhagavad Gita? Which part are you saying? I'm not sure.
No, in the beginning of the purport, it says, Lord instructs
Oh.
that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties as if in military discipline, right? So that's just like an instruction that the Lord is giving. But where in the purport, is it defined the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita?
Well, no, the purpose is, this is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. That the verse is. So what you understand, right? Surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, not expecting anything in return or having a proprietorship, and we continue doing our duty in life without lethargy. So Krishna is asking him to fight, but we are doing our duty. That's the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness, right? We need to surrender to Krishna, and while we are in this body, in this material world, we keep executing our duties to the best of our capacity with Krishna in the center. That's the purpose of Bhagavad Gita, to give us that knowledge.
But then the last word is free from lethargy and fight. Fight is not the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. So it's this one. The word fight is specifically for Arjuna, because he was in a battlefield and he's a Kshatriya, and he was kind of not trying to do his duty of being a Kshatriya. But so if you notice, then even after Krishna became a pure devotee, after hearing the whole Bhagavad Gita, what did he do? He fought. So similarly, you might have a duty, I might have a duty. So what Krishna is telling us, don't give up your duty. And we'll see this as verses come out. Don't give up your duty. Don't give up your whatever your position is in the society, Brahman, Kshatriya, whatever it is. But just bring me into it, and then that will be your perfection of life. But this word fight here is only being used for Arjuna, not for everybody in general.
Right. But so the preceding words are more relevant for the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, you're right, bro. Yes, the preceding words are, but the fight, and even for us, fighting means like whatever we are executing in our duties. And this life is generally considered as a war itself. You are going out to fight with this material world. So you can look at it from that perspective also.
Okay. I understand. Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. So let's see what's in the purport. I thought there was something. Okay, so we're saying that this was then Arjuna did not have to consider the order of the Lord. He had only to execute it. Now, this is important. So Krishna Prabhupada is saying that just because in the military also, there is some submissiveness. So similarly, Prabhupada is kind of just elaborating upon what he means by military discipline. So Krishna, we don't have to consider the order of the Lord or whether it's right or wrong, get into some speculation now. We just move ahead with whatever Krishna wants us to do. So that's just what Krishna Prabhupada is saying. And an example which is used quite often, a cashier may count millions of dollars for his employer, but he does not claim a cent for himself. Similarly, one has to realize that nothing in the world belongs to any individual person, but that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. So when we see everything as Krishna's property, then we will work accordingly. Ishavasyam principle from Vishwapanishad. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yadkincha jagatyam jagat tena taktena bhunjita magada kascha swidhanam. That everything, I have a specific quota for myself, and when I live within those limits, understanding that Krishna is taking care of everything, then I'm doing my doing my duty to the best of my capacity. So no proprietorship. Nothing is mine. Everything is Krishna's. Okay, yes, that's 30. So let's go to 31. Ye me matamidam nityam anutishtanti manavah shraddhavanto anasuyanto muchanti tepi karmabhi. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from knowledge of fruitive, from the bondage of fruitive actions. There are two words here that Krishna is using. One is Shraddhavanto and the other one is Anasuyanto. So these are the two qualities Krishna is highlighting here. People who execute my duties with faith and without envy. So what Arjun can probably ask Krishna that, so Arjun's basic doubt was that karma can be binding. And you're asking me to fight. And then on the other hand, you're also asking me to move away from bad karma. Durena hi avram karma. So what Krishna is saying is now that if you do your karma, with me in the picture, you will not be bound by the laws of nature. So Arjun might think that it is easy. Does that mean that I'll just I'll be in the spiritual consciousness and do whatever I want to, and then nothing will bind to me? No. So Krishna is clarifying further here that you have to be in spiritual consciousness, but then what are some more qualities of that? Krishna is telling that this injunction, which I just gave in verse 3.30, has to be followed with faith and without envy. That's a very important aspect. So if you follow the injunctions with these two things in mind, then for sure you will be liberated. Okay. So faith, the word faith, if you see, it means to have a complete conviction that something will materialize in near future if I follow a certain path. So if you see that, so faith means that's what faith means, that there is something for me. So there's an assumption involved in faith, right? So that's what faith means. Krishna, even in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu tells this that in the Madhya Leela it comes that Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kaye Sudrida Nischay. Krishna Bhakti Karile Sarv Karma Krit Hoy. That faith means that you have this belief and conviction that if I just do Krishna Bhakti, everything will work out fine. So having that much of that faith that's called faith. So that's Shraddha. So that's what Shraddha means. So when you keep going despite challenges, and even though the results are still not very coherent, they're not clear, keep going. That's called faith, right? When a doctor prescribes us a medicine, we take that medicine. Why? Because we have faith in the doctor. We've seen his degrees, and he's famous. I've heard it from other people. So that's faith on the doctor. Shraddha is needed in all walks of life, right? Dealing with your spouses, your family, friends, everybody. You have to have some degree of Shraddha, some faith, right? So that's an important thing here. And just to elaborate upon faith, Bhagavad Gita explains to us, and as we will go forward, we will see that Krishna explains that faith is at two levels. Okay? It's a matter of human choice, and it's also a matter of divine grace. So what it means is that that we also have a choice whether to have faith or not on Krishna. We can bring a lot of doubts in our mind and not have faith on Krishna, right? But then, so there is it's more of a process of human choice, right? So that's what I just wanted to highlight. There is some amount of human choice that is important. Just like, so consider faith as building our muscles. So we go to gym, and we go to gym, we pick up weights, and our muscles start building. Similarly, our faith gets stronger when we engage in appropriate activities, hearing from advanced devotees, studying scriptures, so on and so forth. So just as muscle building activities are required to exert our physical body, faith building activities require to exert our subtle body. That's mind, intelligence, and ego. Right? So we need to exert our muscles, the emotional muscle, spiritual muscle. So by going against the apprehensions that we have in our heart, the doubts we have, the fears we have. So it's a matter of human choice. But then also, faith is also a matter of divine grace, right? As we recently did the Kartik month, right? His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj tells that there are two. Whenever Mother Yashoda was trying to bind Krishna, the rope would fall short by two fingers. And then Maharaj explains that one of that fingers represents my effort and the other is Krishna's grace. And when Krishna sees me putting efforts, then he also brings the grace into the picture. But that is why human choice is also relevant when it comes to faith. So that's an important aspect. And the other part Krishna is saying here is envy. Without envy. Anasuyanto. Anasuyanto is the word. Without envy. Right? So envy is if you see that in one sense, we all are envious of Krishna. That's one thing to understand. Because we want to be the best in whatever we are doing, and because Krishna is the best in everything, so that makes it envious. It makes us also envious in one sense, right? So if you understand that, so just because I am not Krishna conscious and I am self-conscious, is a generic envy that we all have. I want to enjoy. I am the center, right? So the cause of my envy is the forgetfulness of Krishna. Right? So I'm just so self-conscious. So that's the generic version of envy that we all have. That's why we are in this material world. Prabhupada explains that. The reason I am in this material world is because I am envious of Krishna to some extent. Right? There is this famous verse where in Padma Purana, it comes from Padma Purana, that Krishna is complete in 6 opulences. And the 6 opulences are Aishwarya, Virya, Yasha, Shreya, Jnana, and Vairagya. So that's Aishwarya, that's strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, renunciation, beauty. So there are 6 things. So Krishna is complete, right? So he's the source of everything that's attractive. And then I want those attractive things for myself. So I am without Krishna. So I want to enjoy God's kingdom without God in it. So that's what makes me envious. So the biggest thing that we have with envy is this aspect, that we are envious of Krishna. That's the first thing we are envious of. Then sometimes there are so many people, at least devotees are not, but then some people are also envious of the scriptures. That they start making fun of scriptures. That, Krishna is, what was Krishna? I don't believe in Krishna. What is this? All is nonsense. Somebody just wrote it randomly, and all that, so on and so forth. So they become envious of the scriptures also. So Krishna is saying that don't do those things. Don't do those things. Otherwise, you will never be able to. You'll always be in the bondage of this book, right? But so taking a step back. So when we say faith, right? So when I said faith, so faith doesn't mean that we become blind followers. Faith has to be reasonable and verifiable, right? Just like when you're buying a home, you are reasonable, means you check about the builder, you talk to the future neighborhood, you talk to people, so that you are reasonable. And you are verifiable means you also visit the site and you check it for yourself. So so when we sometimes, the Bhagavad, by practicing the Bhagavad philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, we can get rid of the victim mentality. That, something is happening to me, or somebody's trying to hurt me, somebody's trying to be condescending to me. So what Krishna is doing is, when he says that faith, when we have faith that Krishna is my well-wisher, then I'm no more in a victim mentality. I get out of that. So this is a verifiable result. When as Prabhupada always says, taste of pudding is in eating. Nobody can tell you, you have to verify it for yourself. So that's just another aspect of faith in that. Okay. So this is a very important verse. I like this verse personally because of in the purport, Prabhupada gives a very hope-giving, some of hope-giving sentences here. So let's see that. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord. But because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure consciousness. It's a very hope-giving sentences here. Prabhupada is saying that even if we are not executing our bhakti properly, but we have sincerity in our heart, and we're not morose, or I'm not hopeless. I have that. So I can feel helpless but not hopeless. So then if I live my life in that aspect, I'll surely be promoted to a stage of Krishna consciousness. Even though I'm not perfect in my bhakti, but just because I have that sense of sincerity in my heart. And I have faith that, whatever Krishna is giving me will manifest. My bhakti will manifest sometime. So that with that hope, when I keep moving forward, then that means then Krishna is saying that can be, Prabhupada is telling us, then that can make us perfect in our life. Right? That's the beautiful part. So father, when a child makes something for the father, he'll make a painting, let's say, and you might in the painting, and then you ask this child that, oh, what is this painting, and he or she will say probably, oh, this is an elephant, and it's just practically a dot on a piece of paper, and you'll say, how is it an elephant? But just because your child did it for you out of a sheer sincere effort of pleasing you, that makes you happy. So with that same tone, when we do something for Krishna, even if it's not perfect, but if it's sincere, Krishna accepts it and he becomes happy. So that's the beauty of the whole practice that we are following here. So Prabhupada kind of elaborating upon it for us. Okay, so let's do the 32nd verse where Krishna is saying what happens if you don't follow these teachings. Okay, so he's saying, but those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavor for perfection. So no ambiguity here. Krishna is giving a very clear instruction. If you follow, you get this. If you don't follow, this will happen. Right? So Vimudha, Krishna is using the word Vimudha here. Vimudha-dohaṁ. So Vimudha-dohaṁ says perfectly befooled. So that's the word that Krishna is using. So Vimudha is one whose knowledge is fooling them. Right? Mudha. Vimudha. So Mudha is a fool. Vimudha. So that's Vishesh Rupena Mudha. So he's a super fool. Right? So there's so much knowledge, but don't know what is the purpose. It's just foolish. Right? Like recently, I heard this example in one of the classes. I was hearing that once what happened was there were two people who were what they were doing was one of them was digging a hole and the other one was filling it up. Right? So there was a third person just sitting and watching those two people. And he realized that for some time he kept on watching, but then he just stood up and went and asked them, what are you doing? I don't understand the purpose behind it. They said, oh no, we are sowing seeds. He said, sowing seeds? What do you mean? He said, we are sowing seeds. We are in the process of sowing seeds. But today, the third person, who's our friend, whose job is to put the seed, he has not come. So, but then yes, so we are sowing seeds. So what happened? Whatever they were doing is they have completely lost the point. They had completely lost the purpose. So those just people are called Vimudhas. Right? And what will happen to them? Vidhi nashtan achetashaha. They will be ruined in their attempts of perfection. Right? And they will remain Krishna unconscious. Achetasa. Achetasa means unconscious. So instead of being Krishna conscious, they'll become Krishna unconscious. Right? So that's what Krishna is mentioning here. And they're befooled, ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Yeah. So let's see what the Prabhupada has.
So Prabhuji, so a person who in ignorance doesn't carry out the injunctions of the Lord, is that person subject to punishment like in the purport says punishment for disobedience. So, it's not intentional, but they're just in ignorance. And so, just wondering if there's, certainly punishment for disobedience to the order of Supreme Personality of Godhead in like under circumstances of someone who's under ignorance, but not intentional disobedience.
You're saying that that they're disobedient out of ignorance.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yes, they are disobedient out of ignorance, and sometimes what happens is that if the child is, depending on how severe the mistake a child makes, the punishment can also be severe. So the word punishment here is not something that Krishna is a tyrannical God. No, he's a loving God. But sometimes, just like a father has to take a strict measure if a child has done something very ignorant, so the punishment will also be accordingly. So similarly, and the child is also ignorant, he or she doesn't know, but then the punishment has to be so that the lesson can be learned and the person doesn't repeat it again. Yes, so that is why there is a punishment for disobedience, even though it's out of ignorance. Yeah.
But the severity may be less, right? Yeah, when it's under ignorance.
Variety, I didn't get you, Prabhu.
The severity.
Yeah, the severity will depending on how the disobedience is. In the 16th chapter, when we will come, Krishna will give a difference between the demons and the people who have godly qualities and people who have demoniac qualities. And there, Krishna very clearly tells that that three doors to hell, Abhīṣṭa-dohaṁ, that's lust, anger, and greed. So he will say that you should give those up. But if you go deep in those, then you'll get a severe punishment for it. You'll be pushed down into the lower planetary system. So yes, severity will depend on the amount of disobedience. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And then Prabhupada is saying, a disobedient person, however great he may be, is ignorant of his own self and of the Supreme Brahman, Paramatma, and the personality of Godhead due to a vacant heart. Therefore, there is no hope of perfection in his life. This is a very interesting way of putting it. So, as Prabhupada is saying, vacant heart. So, his heart is vacant of the valuable things that are supposed to. His heart is filled with unwanted things, bereft of valuables. So, what we are putting in our heart, as something that I might have mentioned earlier here, that like our ears, they are like, there's this, when you go on the street, you see that no dumping drains to the bay. So there are storm drains. Similarly, our ears also serve as storm drains, and whatever we put in here goes to the bay of our heart. So instead of filling it with the right knowledge and filling it with garbage, so all my garbage will be stored in my heart. So my heart is filled with unwanted things. That is why Prabhupada is saying it's a vacant heart from a spiritual perspective. That is why Prabhupada is calling it a vacant heart. Right now in my heart, there is envy, there is jealousy, so many things that are unwanted. So a heart that gets filled with beautiful qualities of compassion, devotion, that is a full heart. Otherwise, it's always considered a vacant heart. That's why Prabhupada is calling it a vacant heart. And because it's a vacant heart, there is no hope for perfection of life for that person. Any thoughts, any more thoughts from anybody? Anything that you would like to bring up? Any questions, any comments? Okay. 33. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, For everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? This is a very important verse here, important and potentially confusing verse. Because we all the time we are saying, right, that oh, we have to control our senses. We should not kind of let our senses loose. And here Krishna is saying, what can repression accomplish? So it sounds a bit confusing and contradictory, right? Wrong desires are supposed to be gotten rid of and suppressed, but here Krishna is saying, what will repression accomplish? Nigraha kim karishyati. Everyone will act according to nature. And even this small, even jnana cannot help them curb one's nature. So here the important part is the word prakrtir. What does the word prakrtir mean? So what Prabhupada is translating prakrtis as modes of nature. So here what is being talked about is my nature according to the four varnas, my propensities. So prakrti means material nature, and vasana means material desires. Okay? So material nature, the prakrti, my prakrti is something that is innate to my psychophysical nature, and I can harmonize that with my dharma, with my bhakti process. But my vasana, my material desires, they are superficial to my psychophysical nature, and I cannot harmonize them with dharma. So, for example, my varnas, so four varnas are there, right? Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. That indicates my nature. But then my material desires are Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Maya. Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Maya, Matsarya, right? Lust, anger, greed, ignorance, envy, ignorance, pride, and envy. So those are the things. So there's a difference. So what Krishna is mentioning here, he's not saying that don't repress your material desires. What he's saying, don't repress your qualities that come from your nature, which is your inherent nature, which is like a Brahmanic nature or a Vaishya nature. So that's the difference he's saying. So for a Brahman, for example, act intellectually is innate to the soul when the soul is embodied. So in this body, I might have Brahmanical qualities, Kshatriya qualities. So that is not sinful in itself, right? So our nature, our varna is generated by the contact of soul with the body. And that is to be dovetailed, not suppressed. So understand the difference. I see. According to our nature, we have a nature according to the prakrti. So we are not supposed to suppress that. So that's something to be kept in mind, right? That is meant to be dovetailed in Krishna's service. So if I have Brahmanical qualities, and if I feel, then use it for Krishna's service. So please get this idea clear. This is a very important category, a clear idea, important idea, and this is very often misused. There is this whole philosophy. There was this person, right, who came from India. I won't name him, but you might know. He said that you should not repress it. Krishna is saying, don't repress anything. So do all your desires. And he kind of said that, having a sexual relationship, be very open about it. That was his philosophy. So he was using this verse, or actually misusing this verse in a completely wrong. He was completely out of context. So Krishna here is talking about our varnas, not about our material desires. He says, don't suppress your varna, don't suppress your Brahmanical, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra qualities. Some people are extremely good in managing finances. So they can manage finances, for example. You should not suppress that. You have a Vaishya quality. Some people have Brahmanical qualities, scripture, saying and learn. So those people should do that. Sure. So for example, but then how do you understand? Sudras are known to have little self-control. They have very little self-control. So if Shudra wants to live the lifestyle of a Brahmana, right, thinking that, oh, Brahmanas get a lot of respect, I will also live the life of Brahmana. Okay? But then he will not understand, the Shudra will not understand that being a Brahmana requires a lot of regulation, which Shudra does not have. Regulation, waking up early, studying Shastras, being clean, taking bath 3 times a day, so and so forth. So a Shudra, just being attracted by the respect that the Brahman is getting, might want to act like a Brahman. But then that will be a big failure. Because that Brahmana, but the Shudra does not have those qualities it takes to be a Brahmana. That is regulation. So therefore the important point is that Shudra can also be gradually elevated by doing this Varnashrama system. But you should not try to repress it. You should not try to repress your desires or your nature and try to be a someone else. So Mahatma says that Kibe Vipra Kibe Nyasi Shudra Keli Naya. Ye Krishna Tattva Vete say Guru Hai. That a Shudra can also become by understanding Krishna consciousness. So what Krishna is saying, don't repress your nature, right? And if you practice that nature, you can eventually come to the highest platform of being a pure Krishna conscious person. But take that route. Don't try to jump or don't try to artificially take up other person's shoes. Right? So, and then in the purport, Prabhupada mentions that there are many so-called spiritualists who outwardly pose as advanced in the science, but inwardly or privately are completely under particular modes of material nature, which they are unable to surpass. Okay, so Prabhupada is using two words here. Spiritualists who are outwardly pose as advanced in the science, but inwardly or privately are completely under particular mode. Inwardly and privately, two words Prabhupada is using. So what it means is that, what's the difference? Inwardly means they don't express to anyone whatever is in their heart. They try to suppress it. And privately means is they express it, but in private. So there's a difference in these two words. That's why Prabhupada is using it. In one case, there is suppression in the heart, and the other thing is to do it hidden from public view. So there are spiritualists who behave that way. So don't be that kind of a spiritualist, Prabhupada is asking. So then Prabhupada says, no one should suddenly give up his prescribed duties and become a so-called yogi or transcendentalist artificially. We should not do that. Don't become a pseudo-spiritualist, a materialist in the garb of a spiritualist, right? If Krishna wanted us to be that, just to take up other people's duty and try to just present ourselves as spiritualists, then, Krishna wouldn't have gone through all this, because later on in this chapter, towards the end, Krishna will say that, get rid of all this lust, right? Evam buddhi param buddhva samsthabhyam atmanam atmana jahi shatru mahabaho kama rupa durashadam. That kama, lust, get rid of that lust. So that is what Krishna is saying. He's asking us to repress our material desires, not our nature. So there's the difference right there. So we have to be very clear of that. And then there's this nigraha kim karishyati. So what will repression accomplish? So it's not a license for unrestricted sense enjoyment, right? So you have to understand that. So the important point here is, if I could summarize it in some way, is that we should be engaged in a way that we are productive for our devotional service. If I try to do somebody else's work, it will be very disturbing for me also, and might also be a disturbance in the society. So being productive means we are internally satisfied in whatever we are doing, and we are externally competent in doing that. And that comes through introspection. That comes through a process of individual self-discovery. That what is my psychophysical nature, right? So what kind of a soul I am in this particular, right? So being internally satisfied and externally competent is the goal. That is why we should not repress our nature, but we should try to find it, what our true nature is, through a process of individual self-discovery, introspection and realization, and be good at doing our service. Okay? That's the essence here. So don't do things that will make us miserable, make the society, disturb the society, not to do that. So that is, and that as we move ahead in our bhakti process, that is revealed to us, what our true nature is. So our goal should be just to do whatever we can, the best of our capacity, that satisfies us, gives us a sense of satisfaction, puts us in a mode of goodness, and then externally also we are competent in doing it. That's all we have to do. Don't suppress it. That's what Krishna is mentioning. 34. Okay. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So this is verse number 34. So indriyasya, the word indriyasya being used here means senses, and then indriyasya arthe means sense objects. Indriyasya arthe is sense objects. So what Krishna is saying is that there are senses and there are sense objects, and when they interact, between their interaction are situated, what is situated? Raga and dvesha. So raga is attachment and dvesha is detachment. So that's what is being said. So don't come under their control. That's what Krishna is saying to us here. These are enemies. Paripanthina. So pantha means path and pari means thieves. So they steal away our capacity to live according to our dharma. Right? That's what is being mentioned today. So instead of having too much attachment or detachment to senses and the sense objects is like enemies. They'll take away our capacity to execute our dharma. So in the last verse, Krishna said, don't suppress your nature. But here he is saying, don't suppress to your nature, don't suppress to your desires. So he's talking about, as I mentioned, there's prakriti and vasana. Prakriti is material nature, vasana is material desire. So here Krishna is talking about vasana. In the last verse, he was talking about prakriti. So one has to regulate the vasana, right? And act in that regulated state. Expression with regulation, like marriage. Right? Prabhupada tells that if you cannot control your sexual desires, then you can marry, but then in marriage also there is some amount of regulation. Right? We don't use it as a sense gratificatory path. Right? So that's to understand here. Because then it becomes a stumbling block. Then Prabhupada says, those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. So why are those who are in Krishna consciousness naturally reluctant? Because they have had a higher taste. They have had a higher taste. Because they have experienced a higher happiness. So why should I lose the opportunity to have a higher experience, a higher happiness by entangling myself in something? I wouldn't do that. So we naturally become reluctant. And then Prabhupada says here, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul. So the way to understand this is that, first of all, the first thing to understand is that it's only a necessity for conditioned soul, not for a liberated soul. Sex enjoyment is not a necessity for a liberated soul. But for a conditioned soul, it's a necessity. And when it's a necessity, it means is that it's not a physical necessity. It's a psychological necessity. Right? Physical necessities are food, sleep, but sex is not a necessity at that level. It's a psychological need. So because everybody cannot be renounced, because not everybody can have the simple vertical relationship with Krishna, then at some level we become entangled by this body we desires. It's something to understand. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations. And yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. So let's look at the first part. We are allowed, but under rules and regulations. So I gave the example of marriage, right? Yes, we can marry, we can have children, but then we are not falling prey to our lust. But if I don't understand what the purpose of marriage is from a Bhagavad Gita perspective, and kind of entangle myself in sense gratification, then it becomes a nuisance. So purpose is to come together and serve Krishna. But if that is forgotten, and then the marriage will actually fuel our desires, and that will burn away our restrictions, and we will no longer follow dharmic restrictions. Right? So that's important to understand. The rules and regulations are there so that we can practice our bhakti efficiently. So that's the reason there. And then Prabhupada further says, and yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. Yeah. So yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. So we should not rely upon those allowances. That's the thing here. What it means is that there are rules and regulations we have been given. So under those rules and regulations, we can marry, Prabhupada has told us. But then don't become so engrossed in that concept of marriage that you forget that the purpose here was Krishna consciousness, not to marry and gratify your senses. So don't rely too much also on those. No one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness. So in the translation, Krishna is talking about two things: attachment and detachment, right? Aversion. So he's talking about two things. Prabhupada is telling us that don't be detached. So we should not be detached from Krishna consciousness. So somebody may feel that all the suffering in this world is because of detachment. Of attachment, because of attachment. No, suffering can also be because of detachment from Krishna. So the purpose of bhakti is not to develop detachment from this world. The purpose of bhakti is to develop attachment to Krishna, right? So we should not be too much engrossed in trying to solve our material problems, right? Don't be too conscious of your material problems. Don't be too much troubled by your material attachments. But our focus should be to develop attachment to Krishna. That's the essence here. So nothing should make us detached from Krishna. Don't focus on the darkness, but focus on switching the light in the dark room. 25. Okay, so 26, 36, Arjun is going to start speaking. So let's just finish this verse 35. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duty perfectly. Distraction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. So, swadharma is better. Krishna is using the word swadharma. Shreya means good. Swadharma means one's prescribed duties. So don't give up your prescribed duties, Krishna is saying, even though they might be faulty. What is it better than? Someone else's duty. And this is another section which has been misappropriated. When it's saying that, that Krishna says, Paro dharmo bhayavaha. So paradharma means that others' religion, others' duties are bhayavaha. They are dangerous. So many people in India, in one sense, it might be good also, but what they are saying is that when people, many people get converted to other religions, especially in some parts of India, it's more prevalent, converting to other religions, Christianity, so on and so forth. What people misappropriate and use this verse by saying is that, oh, other religions are dangerous. Don't take up other religions. So come back to your original religion. So that's something that Krishna is telling here. Paradharmo bhayava. Don't give up. Don't try to take up others' religions. Right. So here Krishna is again talking about varna. We talked about it. So we talked about 34th verse. Sorry, 33. Oh no, which one was that? We talked where Krishna said, "What will repression accomplish?" There he was talking about your varna. Then in the next verse we came where Krishna was talking about your material desire that you should control. And now here again Krishna is talking about the varna. So he's saying that describe or you do your prescribed duty according to the varna, according to your what you are competent in doing and what makes you satisfied. So do that. Okay. Don't do others' duty. A Brahmana should not try to become a Shudra, or Shudra not try to become a Brahmana necessarily, because that can be a dangerous path. It can lead to a lot of destabilization in the society, and it can also be very harmful for each person, for the person. And Prabhupada is saying, when one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others, right? And Prabhupada gives all these, he talks about Brahmana, Kshatriya, he's talking about those people here, he gives examples. And then in the end, he gives two exceptions. Okay, Vishwamitra, who was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana. Okay, he was Kshatriya, he was a king, he gave up his kingdom, and he sat down to meditation and started doing, he became a Brahmana. On the other hand, Parshuram was a Brahmana, but he acted as a Kshatriya. He went on killing all the Kshatriya race. Right? So, the reason Prabhupada is bringing out these two examples is because he wants to give the exceptions. He wants to quote exceptions, because somebody, again, when they read this verse, they might say, oh, Vishwamitra behaved this way, Parshuram behaved this way, so I can also. Therefore, Prabhupada wants to highlight that there are exceptions, but then the exceptions don't become the rule. Okay? And he's saying that because they were transcendently situated, they could do so. But because we are on material platform, we must perform our duties according to our material nature. We should not follow the examples of Vishwamitra or Parshuram. Exceptions are always there, but they don't become the rule. So that's something to understand. So as Krishna is asking us, just do your duty. Right? Don't try to do somebody else's duty. And then duty means the burden, the duty according to what makes us satisfied and what we are competent into. That part. Okay, so I'll stop here. I won't go forward. If anybody has anything, any comments, anything on their mind, bring out. Now is a good time. Okay, nothing. We'll wrap up. Back next Wednesday. Yes. Thank you.